So I'm going to try and cue or teach energetic training or energetic sensitivity directly. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do this before. So the main premise here is that everything around you is perception. And as such, it's an event, it's a pattern, or it's a process that's happening inside of you. Your sense of sight, all the objects, the body, the feeling sense, all of this stuff that's neuronal, as in it requires a sense organ, the 5 senses or whatever. All of it is the same thing. It's all perception. I don't even want to define it necessarily, because then I'll get into like maybe I'm wrong. But like what we know about the sense data is that it is an event happening in the body. And so the way that this is more than just philosophy, or the way that you can apply this directly to your movement ability or athleticism is to understand that like we think, and there is a pattern here of like this is less buoyant than the air around it, or like it's got a density to it, and so it has weight. And so we have our senses, they obey the laws of physics to a degree, but the way to start pushing on that, because I'm defying the laws of physics right now. This system, without my involvement, just wants to crumple to the floor, right? But like this one, the floss wants to fall. But my involvement breaks or defies the laws of physics. And so the key to deeper athletic or like movement ability in general is maximizing where you are able to apply yourself to the moment or the situation. People call this muscle recruitment, or getting your mind body stuff connected, right? So this is just like the movement way of doing this is, so your arms are not moving through space, it's the perception shifting. And so as the perception shifts, it's more like currents in water running into water. Everything here is the same density. All these perceptions are the same density, they're the same weight, they're the same thing. They're a nervous system event happening inside of you. The weight of the reality of any of this is 100% equal in every way. And the reason that it's moving is similar to the laws of physics. In fact, like this is energetic patterns moving through water. And the water and the energy, the energy is like a little bit different density than the water. And that would be all the electrical reactions from your breath moving. As they move through the water, they change the way that the water bag moves. So when you are moving, you're not just here and this isn't heavier. It's all perception. Maybe something out there is kind of like heavier, but when you're viewing it through the senses, like and people do look at reality more directly than the senses, and it's like there, and you can tell that this reality is based on it, but this reality is not real. Like diverging, but I think that's like stuff like you can look at things like with the DNA as an antenna. So you can look at something with your cells rather than looking at it with the sense organs. And that's just a totally different type of looking. It's just, that's all it is a different type of looking. And there's the different parts of the body are sensitive to the different vibrations things give off. So you can look at things in different ways. And so this is just kind of a trick or a hack for the sense organs. So when you move, it's perception going through perception. So you're feeling out into the space to the same degree as the arm, because it's the same thing. Space is just as much perception as body. So the perceptions all have to shift to account, everything's shifting to account for any type of movement. So one way to get into that larger thing is you can, people visualize or whatever, but it's like move your will through a much larger perception thing. I want to move with the wind. I would want to move with the partner. And you'll see this is already, I'm like, what, like, this is just common sense. This is everybody's common sense for their activity, is that you push your will out into something and you perceive it as part of your body. And there, like, it's like I've never even played soccer, but I can imagine that, like, you get soccer, you're paying close enough attention to the ball to start to feel how you have to perceive to get it to do what you want. And it's like that's happening in every single sport. But if you like working on it directly, it's kind of cool. Like if you like, what are we trying to do with the sports? It's like, oh, we're trying to master the five sense world, right? So real mastery of the five sense world is like understanding. So it's like, and it gets cool. So it's like, I don't know, I always think my main sport was like martial arts and swimming, so I just think in that way. But I boiled it down to like, oh, how do I get, if there's a pattern happening here and I want to punch it, how do I disrupt that pattern the most? And if you look at something as it really is, you can see that it pulls on your perception the exact same way that the dude's blood's flowing through his head, the way the brain's firing, the way that everything there is, it's this swirling thing, right? It's like a pattern moving in your perception, like a whirlpool. So if you just hit a pattern in the water, a lot of the times it'll reform itself, like, and it doesn't disrupt the pattern very much. So it's the cool thing, like in terms of like, you could, like, martial arts is like, if it's martial all the way up to war, you're looking for technologies to like disrupt the person's pattern permanently. That's all that's going on. You wouldn't want to do that in a fight, but with enough sensitivity, you can just wiggle your hand in such a way. You're just looking at, feeling how the person is, and you can very gently traction into the pattern, because it's just in your perception. You can traction into it and super disturb the thing. If you just look at what it looks like, it just looks like an object that you have to touch, and it's like touch harder and harder. But if you feel what's going on, if you feel how the space is of equal density to you, space is equal density to the other person, you can the goal of disruption can be very, very direct. But it's all you're doing on the, like, sports teams. If you're jeering or booing somebody, you're trying to disrupt their pattern, and that pattern is how they would control the ball. There's a perceptual pattern. You want to disrupt their ability to like alter the perception at that ball level. If you're doing sports, is to boo it or to cheer, to reinforce this, to reinforce the momentum. So everyone calls energy like spirit, like what it's just whatever. But so if you want to go to the heart of a five sense mastery, and I think there's other stuff to like worry about, beyond that, it is super important to realize that if you're doing a sport, if you're just perceiving yourself as an object instead of like the reality of like, you're altering the perception, and the perception is the whole thing. So whenever you run or whenever you move, everything is having to accommodate you. So your technique needs to account for all of that. And so it's a deep, deep, deep listening to everything around you and trying to align with it. And if there's not a deep listening, then you don't get results or you get injured. It's like all injury is just a lack of listening. You're just not listening. to something. And by listening, I mean like you listen to what you're seeing, listen to what you're hearing, listen to the body. Listen to the space, even noticing an emptiness, like, oh, there's nothing there. That's just as much noticing as when you notice there's something there. It's all noticing, all equal density. So but you're still in a location somehow. It is what it is. It's just very basically, it is what it is. So if you look at people's metabolism, the way that we've studied it with science, it's energy moving through water. That's what this is for sure. You can look at it directly, and then and it's like obviously that, but sometimes it's like obvious is wrong, so you can then do the science and the study it, and like, oh, it does look to be this sort of electrical phenomenon moving through water, the body water, and the electrical phenomenon is the metabolism, this branching fractal electrical storm fueled by the lungs is happening in water, and then the patterns in that, it kind of waves or oscillates or it does things in rhythms, and as those energetic patterns oscillate in the water, we perceive that. And so the sense organs are simultaneously something we perceive. Like I can look at my eyeballs right now, but I'm also perceiving with them. And they're happening in perception. So they're perceiving, and they are the perceivers. Or they're at very least, they are directly presenting to the perceiver. And the direction of that presentation seems to be into the water. The eyeballs and the other sense organs seem to be presenting something to the water, and then the water sees that presentation and is even moved by that presentation. I guess, yeah, it's very so it's like one of the means of verification. Is it like intellectually, philosophically sound? Yes. Okay, can it be applied? It's like, oh, okay, look at it, like here's the application to it. Martial arts, healing, can you kill with it, can you heal with it? And it's like, that's kind of how you evaluate, is your energetic sensitivity just an idea, or is it applied? So you want to go test it, like, can you get good at stuff, can you do particular things, like can you do a trade or an art or whatever with the philosophy, and like if so, it's like that's kind of a means of validation. But yeah, so that is how to be energetically sensitive, to help you kind of dial in your practice in whatever like sport or movement thing that you're doing or exercise. It really is, it's like the correct exercise. Like once you kind of get that principle, then you're thinking exactly like the best would. It's just all anybody gets to like master their thing, and then it's just on you after that point. Like once you get this, it's like then it's just on you. It's like you know how to meditate, you know how to exercise, you know how to work out, and so then it's just, that's where the if you put the effort and the time in with this understanding, you'll go as far as you try. Whereas like without this understanding, when you put the effort and the time in, it just gets it doesn't quite go where you want it to go because you're not thinking about it quite right. Whereas like if you're thinking about something correctly, then that's the more correct you're thinking about it, the more you can go without being like, oh, this was a surprise, I didn't know I was going this way. Which is everything from like life surprises to like, oh, why does my knee hurt? Or like, oh yeah, I have this problem and I just don't know. I just don't know. I have to go to the like, and it's like we all have. Um, you know, I need a doctor, I need healthcare or whatever, but it's not like I don't. It's like that. Like why, or what is the treatment? What is the reason? And it's like the reason is always like, oh, there's a behavior happening in my perception. Yeah, and then once people find the truth, it's like you don't. There's a lot of different truth that you wouldn't know, and you can recognize it if you see it and you know it, where you don't know it. So you stop thinking very much about things that you don't actually know. Or that aren't true. It's like the truth has a consistency to it. It's like infinitely varied, but there's a consistency to it. And then it's like if you're talking to it, then all the other stuff disappears. Like you just can't think about it. Like you can't think about a lot of politics or a lot of social drama, a lot of sports, because they're fake. Like they're not connected to anything, or they're rigged, or there's something. And it's like, as if you're a truth seeker, it's like you can't it doesn't. You don't even either. It's like there's a desire to not engage with it, because even if it's not being honest, you can't say something true to it, because if you say what you think it is, that's not what it actually is, because it's that plus the pretend. So it's like you can't say something true to it because it'll run into the lie, and then if you agree with the lie, then you're lying. So there's no, you can't engage with it that way. There has to be a kind of a disruption, like a weird disruption. And it's not on the level that the thing's happening. It's just a disruption of the pattern. Um, so it's kind of hard to teach, because it's like, okay, so if you're going to try and punch like that, it's like, well, what do I tell you to do? And it's like, you're there. You're there. You can do it. You can already be considering everything. And if you get, I've taught it before, is it's kind of like if you were going to apply it to a punch, it's like you can have your perception implode. All of your movements are the result of an implosion, right? So it's like if I wanted to be very powerful, I could have an implosion happen near where the camera is, and then as I go forward, my forward momentum is part of a perceptual contraction around it, encompassing it in all kind of directions. And then, like the thing that gets tricky is like even if any of these cues or these pointers become like useful, you're perceiving it. So the relationship changes again from one of control to, or participation to perception. So even if you learn full participation, the instant that you like notice that you're actually participating rather than just perceiving, and the participation is like total. It's like there's total participation. then it has to be like reformulated, and it's like as dynamic as swimming, because of course that's what it is. Like it's like the swimming, or the all the things that you would know is a pattern happening in the being, and then as you move it changes that pattern, so it changes the truth, and then the actual like stay afloat motion or the control motion is like detached from what's going on in that way, but also fully responding to. And that like is a shift from being the surface to being the water that the surface is traveling on, to being a bag of water. Yeah.